Dear friends, let's start this session with a Tirukkural from the chapter 337, Nilayamai, which means instability. ஒரு பொழுதும் வாழ்வது அறியார் கருதுப கோடியும் அல்ல பல, which can be translated as who know not if their happy lives shall last the day, in fancies infinite enchant the hours away. This Tirukkural is very much related to the topic we have picked today. This Kural explains the subjective ideas behind each and every mind. The explanation of this Kural will elaborate the ideas as innumerable are the thoughts which occupy the mind of people, who know not that they shall live another moment. This Kural is dedicated for the unwise, but the reciprocal is for the wise people. Instead of thinking the random and unconcerned matters, we can focus on the objectivity and political aspects of news. This session is going to focus on the objectivity and neutrality of news along with various aspects of media's neutrality. Let's start with objectivity and its meaning. Okay, what is objectivity and subjectivity? In socio-cultural theory, objectivity and subjectivity are interconnected with each other. It means objectivity is a theoretical perspective that omniscient, neutral and detached with respect to a certain attribute or set of attributes. Subjectivity is being located within one's personal feelings and opinions. An editor of a newspaper or sub-editor of a news bulletin will always look into news for a different perspective to understand the objectivity of the happening. An editor of a newspaper or sub-editor of a news bulletin will always look into news for a different perspective to understand the objectivity of the happening. But when it is over-focused with different perspective, it will be ended as a biased journalism. So, let us understand the difference between biased journalism and objective journalistic conditions. What is biased journalism? Biased journalism will destroy people's faith in journalism, which is stimulated by race, religion, caste, political stance like. This will be started with the choice of reporters, choice of perspective, choice of target audience by the corporate news organization. So, this biased journalism is merely an evil for the field of journalism. Neutral media maintains its balanced state. Some media researchers insist that if journalists acknowledge that bias does exist, that it is built into the choices they make when deciding what to leave in and what to leave out. It means a lot to the public. Media is not just a vehicle which passes the information to the public. It passes the right information to them to instigate, to provoke, to take a step to the leap. So, it should be neutral. Public should take their stand from those neutral news. This neutral maintenance is an art which needs an equal training to the Circus Trapeze Act. In the Circus Act, just the artist is responsible for the balance. But in the media, it is in everyone's hands, from the reporters to the editor-in-chief. everyone should understand the balance and maintain it for the sake of ethical neutrality. This neutrality will bring the readers or audience attention and get the credibility of the media platform. If someone loses the balance and take a diversion towards biased journalism, it will reflect in all the levels. With this objectivity, media will look like a mirror and reflect the events, trends, happenings, statements without distorting what is good and what is bad. The remaining part will be handled by the receiver. When a newspaper or a channel picks a side in politics or with any other groups, it will become vulnerable to get final decisions, and it will be in a risk that is the most cruel to the organization, that is losing credibility among the audience. If an article gives one-sided perspective and presented it as a whole story, then the another perspective is hidden for the sake of bias. Half-truth is always dangerous to the readers. They may react with negative understanding and it may lead to a distress call. It is merely fueling the fire. There are more possible chances for this kind of negative understanding in live television debates. That is why a moderator is presented in all debate shows. Then a question may arise, what if the moderator gets biased ideas while moderating the debate? What if he restricts the voice of suppressed people? What if he gives a break to the debate in a crucial moment which may escalate the aggressive conditions participant or audience? Here comes the team effort. The whole team should focus on the objectivity of the debate and insist the equal distribution of the rights to talk about their perspective. Then the television debate will become as a good, healthy, worth decision-making debate. Media will remain in the state of neutrality for the sake of public good. So, every media professional should understand the objectivity and stand against the subjective political opinions. What if the government takes power over media? Media is always the voice for suppressed. In case of terror rise, it hands towards the innocent people. Government neglects the people protest. Censorship brings an iron curtain to the media. It should fight back with the ethical understanding that the media is meant to be the fourth pillar of the nation. In these situations, the media cannot stand on the side of terror with the concept of objectivity. In case of terror, it raises hands towards the innocent people. Government neglects the people protest. Censorship brings an iron curtain to the media. It should fight back with the ethical understanding that the media is meant to be the fourth pillar of the nation. In these situations, the media cannot stand on the side of terror with the concept of objectivity. This happened in the independence struggle too. Media shouted at the face of British government and responded to it with the harsh articles and editorials. The same situation happens now and then, and media reacts the same before with the sharp-ended nips. Media never had been in a dilemma. Even in the emergency period, newspapers wrote against the removal of free speech. That's why the censorship brought into the media professional in those days. During the aggressive times, people may struggle for different opinions. In those days, newspapers should not stop with just providing the facts. What happened in the field struggle? They also wrote routine analysis and interpretations in their reports to keep the calmness among people and dilute the pressure against the condition. This is not a quality of objectivity, but still an objective media can still provide governmental ideas and people's perspective with their analysis as a right act. So, let us discuss about the objectivity and subjectivity of media from this way. Like this, America faced an issue and brought a new understanding of objectivity. This attempts to draw new line between journalists' professional judgments and their personal opinions. Later, the same line was accepted in different nations. Reporters left their personal views, and numerous studies conducted in the intervening years have shown. Reporters left their personal views, and numerous studies conducted in the intervening years have shown many conservatives saw those professional judgments as simply liberal bias in disguise. In particular, the press began to question the government's institutions. Still, those questions saw more pressing elements in press meets. That's why politicians are preparing themselves for the press meet. Because no one knows what kind of questions may come from the reporters, what proofs they may present against them and their activities. The neutrality of reporters may give a ticket to the box office or may eliminate them from the position or party. So, the neutrality of the media is a sharp knife for the government too. The media censorship protects victims, not the culprits. It has been proven in many more sting operations done by investigative journalism. Countless journalists were involved in this kind of reporting against the corrupted people, and they published it for the sake of media objectivity. Theories and justifications, let's see. While discussing about objectivity in the news, media researchers states that no one approaches any story with complete objectivity. A reporter starts to dig something from the first information he or she received. The same moment they will have a bias towards some aspects of the story. But one of the goals of objectivity is directing us to set aside those presumptions and move forward with healthy skepticism. But at the same time, media ethics pushes a reporter to give a voice for the voiceless and provide sufficient information for the objective ideas. Respecting the individual and handling sensitive areas. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics says, minimize harm, treat sources, subjects and colleagues as human beings deserving of respect. This ethic redefining that a responsible journalist may sometimes hurt someone with the sharp nib and its words. But the journalist should always have a caution effort to minimize the damage even for the culprits. When it comes to crime victims, relatives of celebrities and public figures, children and other vulnerable people should be treated with extra sensitivity. Publishing the content gathering in intrusive level may be harmful to anyone. Persistence is appropriate to any journalist, but their aggressive way of treating the news cannot be justified in any situation. That is the best way to portray the subjectivity in case of publishing and instigating news. If a journalist writes with full of hatred and harsh words, its tactics is always rude to anyone. It applies to all kind of journalism and journalistic elements like photographs, exposing personal data and more. During reporting also this objectivity needs to be maintained. Calling officials and repeated calls to PROs are not illegal to a journalist, but still these activities should be self-regulated for the sake of objectivity and smooth operations. While taking photographs and entering into a private property, a journalist should ask for permission to follow the media ethics. In similar cases, victims wish to keep their identity confidential for various reasons, particularly in sexual assault. In those cases, news media should not publish the victim's identity with or without their consents. Okay, now let's see how to read between the lines. Let's take a short look into the analysis which helps a reader to read between the lines to get an objective idea and understand the politics handled by the writer. In this digital era, everyone is familiar with the YouTube channels and its videos. Most of the videos' titles are too impressive, deliberate to invite the viewers. But the content is always usual and known content from various news sites and e-zines. Experienced viewers and readers will choose the channel with more confidence, but the general audience will pick the videos and articles randomly. So, those headlines are becoming as a trap for them. So, if a reader wants to read a real objective news or video, they should understand the connection between headlines and the story content. Instant feedback on YouTube videos helps us to find the correct channel which justifying content. Most of the viewers and readers buy the headlines with a different perspective, and after watching or reading the whole content, they may post or propose alternative headlines that inspired from the content with their perspective. This is also a subjective view upon the content. Now let's see the hidden agenda. Consider why some information in an article is placed in a box and not connected with the news content with the usual news format. That is called as hidden agenda, which is suspiciously subjective to the reporter. In investigative news reports, these box news will serve the off-the-record news in a different way or will provide news derived from company informants or anonymous sources. Some articles will carry illustrations, data, photographs with different colors and highlights. A reader should understand that content is subjective to an ideology. While understanding the ways to look into subjective ideas, we have to listen to media researchers' point of view on objectivity. A.J. Dione wrote a book in 1996 titled "They Only Look Dead," which elaborately explained the position of objectivity and subjectivity in a journalistic mind. The press operates under a number of conflicting dictates. Be neutral yet investigative. Be disengaged but have an impact. Be fair-minded but have an edge. Therein lies the nut of our tortured relationship with objectivity. Few would argue that complete objectivity is possible, yet we bristle when someone suggests we are not being objective or fair or balanced, as if everyone agrees on what they all mean. There are different types of journalism exist in our globe. Few types accept the objectivity and few accepts the subjectivity. But news should be objective for the sake of nation and people, because news can instigate people for peace and terror. That's why still in India, private radio players are not allowed to broadcast their own news bulletins. Government is still analyzing the situation and trying to derive different options for this matter. Developmental journalism is always clear in admitting the objectivity, but investigative journalism and political news are not interested in objectivity for the sake of content and pure discussion options. But lobbying is always crime in media. All media professionals should understand and work with the nature of media ethics. Okay, now let me end this session with the political economy policy handled by the newspapers. Few largest newspapers in each state of India run with their own economical values. But most of the newspapers in India completely unprofitable when they withdraw the governmental advertisements and go for private playing. Print media situation is clearly dependent to the state. So, the objectivity insisted by the government should be played by those newspapers. It is a condition maybe, but the media ethics is justified with this condition, so that people may get objective news instead of instigating subjective news. Most of the nations are struggling to get rid of the subjective news. But in this democratic nation, India possibly sustained the objectivity in media without censorship exclusively for print. This may differ for different media platforms. Paid news, fake news, biased news may roam around different corners of media. But media ethics always tries to bring objectivity to their audience. I hope you all have understood the concept of objectivity and politics of news from this session. In the next session, let us focus on neutrality and bias in news exclusively. Till then, you focus and read between the lines to understand the objectivity and politics behind that news. Thank you.